Dog Nation's exclusive postseason coverage, Go for 2 in 22, is made possible by our partners, R.S. Andrews, Marlowe's Tavern, Georgia Farm Bureau, Royal Caribbean, and by the Wilson PC Personal Injury Attorneys. The 7-6 Apparel Company, Berkshire Hathaway Home Services of Georgia, Discover Dunwoody, and by Kroger. Go for 2 in 22 from Dog Nation. Here's Brandon Adams.
Convention Center. Georgia Media Day going to take place in a couple of minutes, but for right now, going to sneak over here and try to talk to some of the ESPN broadcasters who will call the game, including we've got Chris Fowler over here. We're going to step over and see if we can speak to Chris here for a minute.
Exactly. You're here now.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Just quickly, just before you start working on that, I don't want to.
No, go ahead. I'm just killing time.
Okay. Would it be possible if I can grab your contact information?
We'll get Chris Fowler here coming up in just a minute. Chris is right here. We got Molly McGrath. So we're going to talk to Chris Fowler. Going to try to talk to Kirk Herbstreit. The Georgia Media Day going to take place in just a minute. We're going to see if Fowler's available for a couple of questions here coming up. He's just finishing up what is, to be frank, a little bit of a personal conversation. So we're going to see if we can do that. Got Molly McGrath over here there as well. She's a part of the ESPN radio broadcast. So we're going to walk over here and see if we can see Chris Fowler in just a minute. Good to have you here. We're live in Los Angeles. Go for 2 in 22 coverage taking place all day long. So we're looking forward to that. Obviously, there's always a little bit of tap dancing involved with some of these live shows, and this is an example of that there as well. But we should have a fun conversation coming up in just a moment with Chris Fowler. I got Holly Rowe right over here there as well. We'll get ready to get a chance to talk to her. Let's walk over and see if we can do this. Chris, do you have a couple questions?
Want to sit down or stand up?
I'd love to. Thank you very much. So it's Chris Fowler, the ESPN. Feel free to sit down. I don't mind doing that. It's Chris Fowler, the ESPN broadcaster. So, Chris, you've been in a lot of these big games now, and a lot of that's actually involved Georgia. Do you think about you got millions of people watching, but at the same time, you're a part of Georgia football history now. The Sony Michel touchdown, the Rose Bowl. I've seen the Keely Ringo replay now probably 2 million times. Do you ever think about how you got a job to do for the country, but for the fan base that you're calling the game for, you're a part of the lore now?
That's very flattering. I mean, George has been called by a lot of famous people, a lot of big moments in Georgia history. I do feel like somehow the stars have aligned, and some of my favorite plays that I've ever called was the Sony Michel touchdown at the Rose Bowl. It was one of the most enjoyable experiences I've ever had. And obviously a pick six to cement a championship. We're just lucky enough to have the gig and be able to call it. And I love the reaction from Georgia fans because they'll always send me that clip as if I don't have it already and tell me how many times they listen to it. And they say that they still get goosebumps. So to have your voice be a small piece of documenting what's an amazing moment in Georgia football history is neat. And the same thing happens with other programs too. Alabama fans say similar things. And
we don't like those calls.
I know you don't like, but Clemson, you know, they tend to like you when you call games that they win, right? So,
absolutely.
So I understand that's the factor in play, but it's fun for me.
So if you don't mind a personal question, you've been doing these games now for kind of a while, and yet to people my age, you're also our first game day host there as well, and that's a very important part of a lot of our time as college football fans. What's that transition like for you been over the years? By now you've been in the chair that you're in for quite some time, but you still a lot of cultural relevance as the game day host. How's that transition over these years been for you?
Yeah, totally different. I mean, game day, you build something along with a core group from scratch, brick by brick, right? You get very few chances in life to do something like that. And I felt like we built a business from nothing. Over 25 years, it was amazing to see the growth. It was a huge collaborative effort. But I always wanted to call games. Since I'm a little kid, I'm doing what I wanted to do since I'm 10 years old. And to get to call championship matches in tennis and championship games in football, for me, it can't get any better. So the transition wasn't that hard. I mean, obviously Hugh Jackson, Brett Musburger are icons and legends. And I never viewed I was taking over, their job or filling their shoes or having to meet their standard. It was about just getting the opportunity to do what I wanted to do in a sport I'd already been in for 20 some years at that point. So it's a great ride. I mean, Kirk and I have spent 27 seasons together.
Yeah.
So it's like a elderly married couple. We can finish each other's sentences.
Well, I'll ask one more and then I'll cede the floor to somebody else. What did you learn about Georgia in the Peach Bowl, winning a different kind of game than we'd seen Georgia win in the past? What does that tell you about what they bring with them to LA right now?
Yeah, I knew they brought plenty to the table before that game. I think great teams can win games in different ways. You don't have a narrow path to victory. You got to do it in a defensive grinding game if necessary. You have to win a shootout. You have to do it when a key guy gets injured. You have to come from behind. You have to protect the lead. I mean, Georgia's been through those things now, and I think they answered whatever questions there were. I mean, it's not a team that spent much time behind all year, right? And when they were behind, it was against an inferior team early. So to be behind against one of the true heavyweights in the sport by a couple of touchdowns, but it didn't look very good, and then to respond that way, I think was impressive, just because they have the ability to do it. But a lot of teams get rocked when they're total front runners. They're stomping people in first round knockouts. We've seen them do that plenty, and now you find yourself on the ropes. Do you fight off of it? And I think that obviously, look at the fourth quarter, man. Look what happened in the fourth quarter, 18-3. And that's what Kirby's mantra was for so many years. Georgia couldn't get over the hump in the fourth quarter in the biggest games, namely against that other team, to your west.
Sure.
And they got over it in Indy last year, and then they showed that again against a really good team. And so I think that if it was possible, they added to their deep reservoir of confidence by coming out of the game the way they won it.
It's kind of you to spend time. Thanks a lot.
My pleasure.
Good stuff there from Chris Fowler, the guy who will call the game on ESPN on Saturday night. Some very interesting thoughts from him about how this is going to play out. We got Holly Rowe right over here there as well. Holly's in the midst of an interview. We're going to let her do that. And then don't forget, we'll be live for the Georgia Media Day coming up when all this is done there too. So there's obviously a lot going on. We're having a good day and going to get a chance to talk to Holly Rowe here just for a moment. So when the actual media day begins, you're going to have a little bit like you had for the Peach Bowl in the convention center here. You've got the big stages set up. In fact, I'll show you some of the look here for Media Day while we're waiting for Holly to come free. And hopefully we'll get a chance to speak to Kirk Herbstreit coming up here in just a moment there as well. I have not seen Kirk walk out yet. Just want to try to do that. Let me give you a little bit of a look at the convention center for Media Day. You'll see the podium set up. So the way that's going to be in a moment here is you're going to have the kind of the Georgia players of note. They'll have their own kind of stage podium area. There'll be a lot more guys kind of sitting at tables around here. And we're going to do like we did last Thursday, which is walk around, try to speak to as many of them as we can, kind of give you some of those sights and sounds. We're going to go off the air and then come back on to be able to do that. And then don't forget on Sunday night at 6 p.m. Eastern time, we're going to have a very special Go for 2 in 22 video event where we get a chance to talk to you live and take your calls. Let's see if we can step over here and get a chance to talk to Holly Rowe here for a moment. We're going to call the game on ESPN. We're going to slide in here.
Something a little different from college football.
Okay.
You obviously do a great job covering a lot of the world of sports, but you've also been very influential in the WNBA as far as making sure that product continues to get elevated. What is it about that league? What is it about just the players that you are able to bring out their stories and really make them resonate with the public and with the fan base?
I remember distinctly the day that I went to the first WNBA game ever. This is almost 30 years ago now. And I just remember walking out onto the court and weeping that women had that platform. So I would just say I've been in love with the WNBA my whole life because, I'm a frustrated player myself. I wanted to play. I wanted to grow up and play. So I'm so happy for these women and who they've become as a league with their social justice, their conscience, their awareness. They are everything that's good and beautiful about women in our country and women in sports. And I want to elevate that at every opportunity.
When you look at teams.
So Holly in the midst of doing a different interview right now. We're going to give her a chance to do that and try to slide over there and talk to her in just a minute. People also gathering here for the Georgia Media Day there as well. So we're going to get ready to have a great time and enjoy this on this Go for 2 and 22 event live from Los Angeles. Big coverage coming throughout the weekend here on both Saturday and Sunday. Getting a chance to hopefully speak to Kirk Herbstreit in just a minute. I apologize for not looking at you. I'm looking around to see when he's walking in or what might be going on here. Obviously, had a great chance a moment ago to hear from Chris Fowler. Obviously doing a great job calling this game for ESPN. Interesting to hear from Chris his thoughts about really being a part of Georgia football history now, calling the Rose Bowl, calling last year's national championship game, calling the Peach Bowl the other night. Some of those calls will go down and be very memorable for Georgia fans for a long time. Interesting to hear him doing that. So that's what we're kind of doing here, kind of biding that time prior to the start of Georgia Media Day here coming up in just a moment. Let's slide in here and get ready to speak to Holly Rowe. Looking forward to being able to do that. She'll call the game for ESPN. Here's more from Holly.
I'm actually meeting up with Candace Parker later today, so I would have more information later. But Candace has a big decision. You know, she has kind of built something special there in Chicago, but her family's here in LA. Her daughter's in school here playing volleyball, so I know there's a lot of family decisions to be made. Candace wants to keep playing, so stay tuned for that. I don't have the answer, but maybe later this afternoon I will.
Okay. Lastly, Nneka Ogwumike, she's a free agent as well. She's very vital to the Sparks organization, not just on the court, but also as the organization that they continue to build. How devastating would that be if she decided to go elsewhere?
I think Nneka, said some statements at the end of the year that she wants to stay in LA. I think it would be a big deal if she leaves, but I have noticed that the Sparks are trying to upgrade what they're doing as a franchise. I've been very disappointed with how the Sparks have been run lately. They've let that franchise fall into disrepair, and they've made some hires recently, first with Kurt Miller as the head coach. They just brought in Karen Bryant, who's going to help get their business side and their GM side put together. So hopefully they can build back into a strong franchise, because that's what the W deserves, and that's what the people of Los Angeles deserve, is that franchise to be one of the best.
So much,
Holly, thanks for spending some time with us. We're live on Dog Nation right now. You obviously see a different side of this Georgia team because of the job that you do. How about the personalities of this team? For the fans who want as much of this team as they can get, what do you see from them when you have a chance to interview them in moments like this? What stands out to you about Georgia compared to all the other teams you get a chance to cover?
Well, number one, Georgia's swaggy. It starts with, you would never believe it, Stetson Bennett, but he's so funny. He's got this personality. He's got this swag to him that's really great. But then guys like Keely Ringo, who absolutely believe in themselves and know that they're good. Cedric Van Pran is a player that I'm really obsessed with because of his thoughtfulness and his awareness in life. He's one of the deepest, most interesting kids we've been around. So I think Cedric Van Pran is somebody. So they have such a different variety of guys that I think makes a really special collective.
You mentioned the idea of Stetson maybe being a little bit different than some people might think. I think because the backstory, former walk-on, not the biggest guy, that some people might think he has a little bit of an underdog mentality. But the truth is, and you might say this yourself, is that he actually has a great reservoir of confidence. It's probably a little bit different maybe sometimes than the profile that some people might assume he would have.
Yeah, he was a successful athlete as a kid. He was a state champion in baseball. He has been a successful athlete all of his life. He just had to prove to other people that he was good enough at this level. And I think he has successfully done that. Now, listen, if he is able to win this game on Monday night, he'll go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks, not just in Georgia history, in college football history, because there's not that many guys who've won back-to-back at quarterback. So he's a really special kid, and I'm really grateful. I've gotten to know he and his family pretty well.
I'll finish with this. A lot of Georgia fans getting acquainted with TCU here pretty quick. Not a lot of backstory between the two teams. What have you learned about TCU? What do you know about them that you think would be interesting for these Georgia fans who are maybe a little bit surprised to see the Horned Frogs across from Georgia this national championship game?
Yeah, I think the number one thing is Georgia fans beware. I mean, the frog is real. I'm very proud of this. I had a bite in November on the Paul Feinbaum show that said, get ready, TCU is going to be in the college football playoff. And I was right, because I saw them in person early in the season, and I knew they were such an intriguing blend of physicality and speed. So watch out. They are faster, they're bigger, they're stronger, and their offense is a better system than people give them credit for. So Georgia fans, beware, the frog is real.
Holly, we love your work. Thanks for spending some time with us. Enjoying Los Angeles. Okay?
Yes, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Good stuff there from Holly Rowe. She's going to call the game for ESPN. I have not seen Kirk Herbstreit walk around yet, so I'm going to call an audible on this. Looks like the Georgia Media Day is getting ready to get started, so let's do this. Let's go off the air for this. We're going to change the stream. We're going to pop back on. We're going to talk to Georgia coaches and players as a part of Georgia Media Day. So thanks for being here on Dog Nation. Thanks for being with us as we go for 2 and 22, and then we'll be right back on after this.
Dog Nation's postseason coverage, Go for 2 in 22, is made possible by our partners including
Georgia Farm Bureau. With local agents all across the state of Georgia, Georgia Farm Bureau is the home team. Find your agent today at gfbinsurance.com.
Discover Dunwoody. Stay at one of our 9 hotels and enjoy easy access to 2 MARTA stations, which is just a short ride to downtown. Visit discoverdunwoody.com/dognation to book your stay today.
Royal Caribbean. Reserve your cabin on the 2nd annual cruise with Dog Nation in April. Visit royaldogs.com to reserve your cabin today.